Breaking news for you tonight. The Daily Caller is now reporting the identity of Feinstein's so-called Chinese driver. It turns out he was quite a bit more than a driver. Joining us tonight, Daily Caller's investigative reporter, Luke Rosiak. Luke, great to have you with us. And this is remarkable. The identity first of the spy who worked, quote unquote, as Feinstein put it, as a driver for 20 years.
This is a guy named Russell Lowe, L-E-W-E. He's a Chinese American who was her office manager for 20 years, so he's not a low-level guy.
Did you say office manager?
He was office manager in San Francisco, so he was higher up. He was meeting with ambassadors. He was, attending high-profile events. He was not a gopher. He was not just a mere driver, as Feinstein characterized him.
Well, perhaps she mischaracterized or misremembered. That's quite a different matter. And as office manager, he would have access to all sorts of information, as well as the comings and goings of Dianne Feinstein, who served as the chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence for years and years.
Yeah, and as a driver, because that was part of his capacity, presumably, he was in a position to overhear pretty much more than anything.
Right.
And as you heard in Donald Trump's kind of clip, she basically shrugged about this when it came out. When the FBI told her that this guy was working with the Chinese government, she didn't tell anyone. She didn't even tell her own staff. She just let him retire. So when you look at that tweet, she says, oh, well, the Chinese were approaching my guy, but I made sure he didn't work here anymore. They weren't approaching him, they were working with him, and she let him, she phrases that carefully, because she didn't even fire this guy. This guy retired with a pension. He is now working at what appears to me to be a propaganda outfit in San Francisco, pushing dirt on Japan. So this isn't a guy that was merely recruited by China. He's a sort of a player in these geopolitical warfare battles, sort of this militant Chinese guy who's professionally involved in this kind of thing. And he's out there actually continuing to make speeches where he is billed as a former aide to Dianne Feinstein, and that's what happens when you cover up things like that. The people get to go ride your coattails and continue to associate with you. He's not disgraced. He's still out there actually meeting. He met with a Congressman, Mike Honda, recently. He's still associating with these Washington types. He's still part of the political scene because Dianne Feinstein did not take swift action.
And his name again?
Russell Lowe, L-O-W-E.
It's amazing. Chinese American, still in San Francisco, and without belaboring the point, where in the world are intelligence agencies? They are the ones who informed Feinstein of his that he had handlers, not just simply people with whom he had little conversations, had handlers from the Chinese government driving his efforts.
Right, and when you witness a cover-up like this, who knows what you can believe, but the limited information that we've heard is that they said, okay, he stole political information, but not national intelligence, so we're not going to prosecute him, which, by the way, of course you can prosecute. The FBI finds ways of prosecuting people when they want to. For one thing, you could presumably charge him with the Foreign Agent Registration Act, just like Manafort. But what the sense that I get is that Feinstein told them, hey, there's no need to prosecute this, let's just make it go away quietly, and the FBI was happy to do her bidding.
Well, it's almost presages the Comey struggles between gross negligence in the investigation of Hillary Clinton and landing on, instead of gross negligence, extreme carelessness, which did not mandate prosecution. He said. It turns out that that's a false, if you will, choice and not true at all. Look, let's go to Feinstein's tweet responding to the president, calling her out. This is Feinstein's response to the Trump tweets. The FBI told me, she acknowledges, told me 5 years ago it had concerns that China was seeking to recruit an administrative member of my California staff despite no access to sensitive information. I took those concerns seriously, learned the facts, and made sure the employee left my office immediately. Well, now that sounds absolutely casual and harmless. No threats, no secret, access to secret information. But again, it wasn't a driver either. It was her office manager.
Well, keep in mind the way that, you know, she didn't express any outrage here. The cognitive dissonance is enough to make your head explode. I thought we cared about meddling. I thought we cared about national security and classified information. And when it happens to the Democrats, as it has time and time again, they kind of just take such a casual attitude. Remember, Feinstein was the one who, when the Intelligence Community Inspector General, Charles McCullough, who was an Obama appointee, he was kind of the one who actually found classified information on Hillary's secret email server. And he said that he was bullied by Dianne Feinstein until he dropped it, which is a pretty huge deal.
And another huge deal, she's not unacquainted with huge deals. Remember, it was Senator Feinstein, as chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, when it was discovered that John Brennan's CIA had been surveilling the committee's servers. First, he denied it. So they not only spied on the Senate Intelligence Committee, which has oversight responsibility in addition to everything else. If that wasn't bad enough, they were in charge of oversight. First of all, he denied doing so, then had to admit he did, and then she said, well, we're not going to prosecute anybody, despite his actions as the head of the CIA in that agency surveilling. I mean, Feinstein has a record here. One wonders why anyone listened to her when they started talking about a special counsel, for crying out loud.
Right, and this is kind of what the Congress does. They would rather be compromised than embarrassed. And she just said, look how embarrassing this is. The Chinese must be laughing at us. And I think they are. I think the Chinese are laughing all the way to the bank when this guy is still out there in public life with no consequences.
Well, maybe this explains something else, Luke, that's worth pursuing, and that is, maybe the Chinese had so much on her that she was incapable of giving up her access or in any way thwarting the many sources at the CIA that she had access to and who were sharing intelligence with her and her committee. This looks very dangerous and potentially extraordinarily explosive.
Yes, and look at how the FBI handled it. They merely told her what they had learned and allowed her to handle that. Contrast that to what they did with Donald Trump when they basically infiltrated the campaign instead of just going to him and saying, look, there may be problems with your staffers. We wanted to make you aware.
Yeah, or contrast it with, for example, a meeting between Donald Trump Jr. And a Russian attorney in the Trump Tower, and the interest that it just is extensive across Capitol Hill, particularly Adam Schiff talking about his deep concerns. Yet you have absolute knowledge of all of the contacts and correlations between whether it's Senator Mark Warner, the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and overseas spies and interlocutors. And, you know, there just seems to be an absolute imbalance here between what the FBI gets interested in and what the intelligence committees get interested in, and the reality, which is that we are watching right now a country whose president is being gamed by a special counsel and the Democratic Party severely and to the detriment of this nation.
And here you have a Chinese spy infiltrating the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, and the media didn't even care enough to look up his name. The story's been out for about 5 days. There was no stakeouts. There was no, staking out people's houses, massive press conferences. No one could be bothered to look up this guy's name in public records until my colleague Peter Hassan at the Daily Caller News Foundation did it.
Well, congratulations to the Daily Caller, and our compliments to him and to you for bringing us this story tonight. Oh yes, there was another spy case that just came to mind, just coincidentally. There were the spies within the Trump campaign who had been placed there by the democratically and deep state inspired FBI leadership as well. Oh, did I mention the FISA court judges? It looks like they have a problem as well. Luke, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it always. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Luke Rosiak. Mark Zuckerberg now wants to use our personal banking information to offer new features and to boost user engagement. Why not? Facebook has such a record. Facebook asking big banks for their users' personal banking information that would include card transactions along with account balances. Facebook claiming it will never, ever, ever share that information with third parties. But that hasn't gone so well, has it? In the past, we understand one major bank has withdrawn from the generous offer on the part of Facebook. that bank not named at this point. Well, 11 people killed following a deadly weekend in Chicago. Authorities say 70 people were shot. Gang violence, the reason in most instances. The leftist mayor, Rahm Emanuel, and the city's police superintendent are now calling on citizens in the community to, quote, step up to help combat the violence. So far, the murder rate is down 20% this year in Chicago. Last year, there were 650 homicides in the cities. That's what passes for a baseline in the city of Chicago when it comes to murder rates. Well, will the Obama administration's failure to address the scourge of shootings and murder in the Windy City be on display in the presidential library that's set to cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars? Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. The question is, do you think the national left-wing media will ever cover real-life violence against communities and conservatives as vigorously as they pursue perceived threats against themselves, that is, so-called journalists? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. We'd like to hear from you. Up next, former Clinton White House press secretary Joe Lockhart is very upset, challenging President Trump. And guess what he's going after? Imagine this, the spokesman for the Clinton White House, he wants to talk about credibility. We'll have his outrageous comments here and much more next. Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin.